G'day. So, here's a book, Struggle for Cargo, by John Grover. All right. This was a book written back in 1982, 1983. I read it a bunch of years ago. Anyway, so it's about 40 years old, roughly. It's a very interesting book. And I think some passages from the introduction and foreword, after reading them just before, again, are more relevant for today than they were back when this was actually written, and on a entirely different topic, but one that is, we'll say, a major event in the world today. So here we go. Foreword. Burke said there were 3 estates in Parliament, but in the reporters' gallery yonder there sat a 4th estate more important far than they all. That was by Thomas Carlyle, 1795 to 1881. If Carlyle were living today, he might add that there is a 5th estate influencing parliaments on the Australian scene, and adopting the nomenclature, I hate those silly words, of this age, he might identify it not as a 5th estate, but as a 5th column. Okay. Those who know about 5th columns will understand. This volume is a forthright attempt to review and comment on the self-destructive tactics at all levels of the Australian community. The author, John Grover, has learned of the hopes and the disappointments of the Australian working man, the Australian soldier, and the Australian business executive. As a soldier, he served overseas with field engineers from 1941 to 1945. After that, he learned enormously from workmates with whom he laboured as an underground miner of gold and copper in Cobar, New South Wales, and in the lead-zinc mines in Broken Hill. There he gained the invaluable and physically demanding practical down-to-earth experience which every professional mining engineer must have. For nearly 2 decades he directed geological exploration by land, sea and air, and the assessment of mineral resources in the islands of the South Pacific. As a senior civil servant, chairman of the mining board and various committees, he also gained operational experience in the theory and practice of government. In consequence, he is sensitive to and aware of good government in relation to the development of mineral resources. After a period with industry in Australia, he spent from 1975 to 77 managing the United Nations project in Ethiopia. On his return to Australia, he joined the All-Australian company Pico Woolsand Limited, retiring in 1982. This book is written for the man in the street, for housewives, students, teachers, professional men and women, politicians, journalists, public servants at all levels, and executives within the union movement and business. It will interest those within and on the fringes of our mineral resources industry. It points out how events in the days of our lives can impinge on our well-being and future welfare. Given a maximum of opportunity, any individual or community of families can fulfill their highest expectations and more under our Australian system, but it calls for vision, for competent men in all walks of life, in all trades and professions, men with courage, knowledge, and a willingness to work and invest in the future of this country in which they believe, and which they will be prepared to defend. Such men will see beyond and challenge the stultifying thinking that lowers our standards by deliberate waste, advocating an outmoded, negative, Marxian, Bismarckian philosophy, which has never succeeded in improving the lot of the people anywhere. Our once less developed Asian neighbours are looking into the future with determination, discipline and vitality. But forward vision in Australia is inhibited by consistently doubtful and/or biased research results presented to business, political and union leaders when the facts of the national situation are different indeed. Industry's financial reserves long have been dissipated. Virtually none are left for the large new projects or for the rehabilitation of outdated facilities. Yet some union leaders, acting independently of the ACTU, continue to create financial and human wreckage. As unemployment soars, they claim significant gains for their remaining members, each such gain adding to further retrenchments. The recent concentration on severance pay terms has become a refinement that is counterproductive. Not only is it adding to liquidations, bankruptcies, and unemployment, it adds further burdens to government budgets which must eventually fall upon the taxpayer. We Australians should have a better vision for our future than this. Okay, that was Emeritus Professor John P. Morgan from Coogee South. Okay, what the hell's that got to do with now? Well, you can see that once upon a time there was people brave enough to stand up and speak out and tell the truth. Australia, what the hell are you doing? Never mind. Okay, moving on. Preface of the book, Struggle for Cargo by John Grover. If you haven't seen this book, you probably would look at it and just pass it by. It's well worth a read. Know your history. Preface. Australia's hopes are at risk. It is easy to blame one section of the community, but in fact the responsibility for what is going on lies at much higher levels than we're being led to believe. If we let our bureaucratic and political princes have their heads, our children will be in much worse trouble than we are now. This was written 40 years ago. Our children, I'm one of those children that this book was speaking about, am in a much worse position than when we were in 1982. Okay. Moving on. The hidden tax of inflation has undermined our morale and our national unity and led to overtaxation. Henry Hazlitt once wrote, "It is not merely inflation breeds dishonesty in a nation. Inflation is itself a dishonest act on the part of government and sets the example for private citizens. When modern governments inflate by increasing the paper money supply, directly or indirectly they do what kings once did when they clipped coins. Diluting the money supply is the moral equivalent of diluting the milk supply with water." Okay. So our government is increasing inflation and our economy's fucked. Sorry to swear, but it's the truth. The current situation starts with a C, ends with 19. I'm not going to mention the name of it because YouTube might delete it, flag it, or spaz out periodically, as they like to delete videos that go against the narrative. I'm not very happy about that. Carrying on. Some would restrict my freedom to speak by saying that I have a vested interest. Of course I have. So does everybody else. We all have our particular interests, but there is no need to lie to protect them. Okay. I tread dangerous ground. Others may disregard the facts, but I cannot. I fully back that statement 100%. Full agreement with that. Moving on. Not only my opponents, but also more timid fair-weather colleagues will be looking for something with which to criticize or discredit me. So I'm bound to tell the truth as closely as I can see it, even if I lose friends in the process. Hi. So, moving on once again. I'm sorry to do that, but I can't help myself. Some will oppose my view that Australians have a right to be informed fully and to be given more than one interpretation, so that instead of being manipulated by smooth talkers, they can judge for themselves. Some will disagree with my belief that there are many thinking people in our community, and that well-informed judgment across the board is democracy's only protection against domination by a minority of affluent extremist intellectuals. From their armchairs, executive desks, and ivory towers, they make no secret of their aim to blight our economy, lower our living standards, and bring down our way of life. Those who have met them have heard from their own lips the words, "We have no argument with you, but you don't understand. We are out to break the system." One must be saddened by such an attitude. It is the road to power for men who lack ability, real merit, and numbers. Their arguments show them to be incompetent. They look to young, malleable Australians for support. They use a skillful, well-thought-out emotional and psychological approach that is not of Australian origin. They bamboozle us by dwelling on pseudo-scientific issues that people can't be expected to know much about. They keep us away from those who know enough to see through their untruths. They say to us, "Don't trust the expert." They echo the words of the wealthy American no-grow movement, which uses anti-corporate slogans, but which in reality is opposed to the working man's interests. The job stoppers carry more weight than they should. Now he's speaking about unions and Marxists and socialists, communists, other assorted people with bad ideas. I'm trying to be polite. Carrying on. Remarkable inroads have been made on our bureaucracies and on those among our teachers, our churchmen, and our politicians who don't know enough to realise that they are being misinformed. This has led me to recognise firstly that good information from a free media is a country's first line of defence, and secondly that knowledge is man's only defence against those who deliberately misuse the enormous power of our media's freedom. A free media. One that will debate, will talk about both sides, not just push one narrative. Okay, looking at our media today, one narrative. There is no debate. It's propaganda machine to the max. Okay, the Nazis would be proud. The Australian media is dead. They're just a propaganda wing of the we'll call them the government. Carrying on. Since I began to write on this subject, it has received attention from the media with good effect. Changes are being made, and credit must be given to those journalists who have helped the cause of common sense. However, the events concerned apply more widely across the nation and not only in the coal industry. It is not sufficient only to know. We must think, and we must decide what to do. For if we lack the courage to face facts, we cannot expect to survive for long as a free people. The situation is as serious as that. John Grover, Sydney. So 40 years ago, this guy was talking about some things that have come to pass. Next page is a quote from Edmund Burke. "All that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing." I think I'm a good man. I'm doing something. I don't like evil. Evil's pretty bad. Here's another quote. This is from Russell Madigan. "A squid has attributes in common with government. It can change its colour quickly, squirt a cloud of ink to confuse its followers, and swims backwards. It can see where it has been, but only has a very rough idea of where it is going." Wow. Okay. Here's another quote. "Most of the greatest evils that man has inflicted upon man have come through people feeling quite certain about something which, in fact, was false." So that's just a brief intro, and I'll pop another little quick quote in here. Page 16. It's an anonymous quote. "A democracy cannot exist as a permanent form of government. It can only exist until the voters discover They can vote themselves funds from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates promising the most benefits, with the result that the democracy collapses over loose financial policy. This is always followed by dictatorship. I'd mic drop, but I like books too much. So, 40 years since that book was written, welfare has massively increased. Politicians are all about handouts, handouts, handouts. The current 2020 situation dealing with the car owner situation, the economy has been destroyed systematically. People's freedoms have been destroyed systematically. We have the military actively working against the Australian people, working in call centres and going around enforcing quarantines on healthy people. The media, 100% complicit in this whole thing. The government, 100% complicit in this whole thing. I cannot think of any politicians that I've heard publicly speak out about this situation and say that it is all rubbish. Local councils, even though they are not a third tier or third level of government as defined by the Constitution 1901, I have it on camera, they do declare themselves as a third level of government. I would like to upload that, but the local council has a nasty habit of getting YouTube to delete videos of them acting questionably, we'll say. I've spoken to business owners around town, managers, etc. Most of them do not agree with the policies and the rules being enforced upon their business, which is detrimental to their business. They are in fear that the government will come in and close down their business if they do not comply with rules. Now, the rules are not laws, they're just guidelines. There's a big difference. So the local economy is suffering hugely. This is impacting everyday mums and dads, families, kids, dogs, goldfish, you name it. We're all affected. Local council is 100% complicit. They need to stop. The government also has mystery shoppers who spy on people and businesses for the government. This comes from business owners. It's part of the reason why they do comply with the rules. Okay. So the government is actively working against you, the local council is actively working against you, the state government is actively working against you. All because of the flu. The car owner is less dangerous than the flu from the last 2 years, and this is by official documents in their own words. This is not mine. Look it up, check it out, do your homework, research it. I did. That's why I do not believe that the car owner situation is any threat to the Australian public or the greater human race. I do think that our governments are a bigger threat than car owner as far as everything else goes. It could be said that this is a conspiracy of government or actors within the government, but in saying that, then I would be labelled a conspiracy theorist. But if two or more people are working towards an agenda, technically, in the definition of the word, that is a conspiracy. So have a look, have a think. always think, always question. Things smell really bad, and it's only getting worse. It's like that dead kangaroo along the highway. You don't smell it until it's right on top of you, and then the smell lingers. Windows up or windows down. So look, I'm trying to just get some information out for the people in the community, people I love, friends, family. A lot of them are influenced by the media heavily because they still watch television. I haven't watched TV for years, and I basically unplugged it. Once upon a time, I did trust the media. I was an absolute freak for information. I would read newspapers daily, multiple sources. I would watch television news daily, multiple sources. And one day I discovered the internet, and I then had access to a hell of a lot more information and a lot more point of views. I was able to put a lot more perspective to my worldview, and that was one of the best things that I have ever done. So look, we've been led down the garden path, and I would say that I think through my investigations that certain agencies have definitely been corrupted, irrefutably. I am still investigating more, and I will bring you more information as it comes about. So have a beautiful day. Thanks for listening. Bye.